Good morning. Happy Friday. Today is the second day that we're going to be focusing our work on geometry and specifically looking at angles. And we're going to continue to look at what happens when we have two parallel lines and a third line, a transversal, intersects both of those parallel lines, and some of the cool tricks we can see about the angles when we have this situation. By now, you already should have read through today's objectives and key terms, talked about those with your partner, made sure they made sense. And then you two both should have completed today's exploratory problems and done your best to work on these before you're analyzing your work with this video recap. After this video, you're going to take some of these tricks or these properties of angles that we understand about parallel lines, and you're going to apply those skills on some challenging practice problems that follow. For the first exploratory problem today, zoom out a little bit, we were given two parallel lines. We have line AB, line CD, and we're told that those two line segments, AB and CD, were parallel to each other. Then we have line T, this purple colored line here, which is a transversal because it cuts through more than one line. In this case, it intersects both line AB here and then the parallel line CD down here. The first question we're asked is which angle is the corresponding angle with angle 1? Here's angle 1 up here. And we know a corresponding angle from yesterday. We see this cluster here, the first line AB that's intersected, and then this cluster down here where line CD is intersected. Angle 1 corresponds or matches up with angle 5. So our answer here is going to end up being angle 5 corresponds with angle 1. What we know, the real key about this, the second half of this question, what do we know about corresponding angles? The big key, we know they are equal in measure. They have the same degree of measure. The math word would be congruent that we're really looking to see here. So that's going to help us if we know that angle 1 is 105 degrees. Understanding that corresponding angle 5 is also 105 degrees is a key part for really working through part C here today. Part B then asks us which angles form a supplementary pair with angle 1 and what do we know about these supplementary angles. So at this point, if I didn't know what a supplementary angle is, I could search it on Google, or it turns out it's also one of our key terms today that you should have been aware of had you read through the key terms. Supplementary angles are two angles that add up to 180 degrees. They form a straight line together. And what we see here for angle 1 and angle 2 are a supplementary pair together. If you just focus on angle 1 and 2 and put them together, they form a straight line where AB is. So I can say angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary to each other, or a supplementary pair. They add up to 180 degrees. I could also say the same thing about angle 1 and angle 3. So we see here angle 1 and angle 3 together, they form a straight line, 180 degree angle. It's that line T that if we put 1 and 3 together, they just make a 180 degree angle. So we could also say angle 1 and angle 3 are supplementary to each other. And if we know about vertical angles, we already recognize this, but this also shows us angle 2 and angle 3 must have the same value. Another proof for why vertical angles are congruent. The real key here, I know now that x, that's angle 2 and angle 3, plus 105 degrees equals 180, because they're a supplementary pair. And I recognize that 75 degrees is the measure for angle 2 or for angle 3 because that's how they form a supplementary 180 degree pair. Using some of your properties of math, this can help you work out the rest of table C, which I'm going to have you do on your own. At this point, if you had struggled with part B, I'd encourage you to again pause the video, you and your partner try to figure this out on your own. But now I'm going to talk you through part B. It says part B is a little different. It's still based on some of these same properties, but it's going to combine another skill. We're shown this graph here, or this diagram, where line AB is intersected with line G, and we see this vertical pair, these two angles. We don't get the measure, but we just get an algebra expression to represent the measure of degrees. So when I see AB intersected with line G and these two angles here, what do we know about these two angles if they are a vertical pair? The key thing to recognize here is these two angles are congruent. They have the same measure. So because of that, and I don't have a whiteboard right now, but because of that, I know that 3x plus 10, the top angle up there, has to have the same value or be equal to 5x minus 30. Again, these two angles are a vertical pair, and we know vertical pairs are congruent to each other. You can see here how they look like they have the same measure, and we saw earlier some proof of why that is true. So if I have a statement where x is the only variable in the equation, but it's on both sides, I need to do something to get x to the same side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3x from both sides of this equation. And as we subtract 3x from both sides of the equation, we end up getting 10 equals 2x minus 30. We add 30 to both sides, we get 40 is equal to 2x, and we figure out x is equal to 20. Again, we took this equation right here, used inverse operations to gather the x's to the right side of the equation, then the constants to the left side of the equation, divided by 2, and we realized x is equal to 20. So that can also help me then figure out what is the measure for the angles. If I plug in a 20 for x, 3 times 20 is 60. 60 plus 10 is 70. So we get 70 degrees for the measure there. Alternatively, you could have taken that 20 right here and plugged 20 into 5x minus 30. 5 times 20 is 100. 100 minus 30 also would give you 70 degrees. So we see these angles just shy of a right angle, just a little smaller than a right angle, measure out to be 70 degrees according to this algebra equation we were able to write. At this point, please make sure you fill out part C, write one new thing you've learned about angles, and then please see me if you've got any questions as you're working through the rest of the practice problems with your partner.